there, guys. My name's Bob, and this is the Higher Way podcast. It's an early morning in Birmingham, and I've got Nigel Tropman on the line. Morning, Nigel. How are you doing, mate?
Morning, Bob. I'm well, thank you.
Good. So you're still in Birmingham then?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, some things never change.
Yeah, working your way through the magical lockdown, eh? So
yeah.
How are you been coping with the lockdown? With your training and all of that sort of thing?
I'm lucky in that respect because the arts that I actually train in, one of them is Pencak Silat. So I have a lot of gurus that I can actually train on my own. So a lot of my training with regards to martial arts wise, I can do that.
Right.
The stuff that I was doing was mainly my cardio, really, to be honest. I've been doing quite a bit of skipping. I've been doing a lot of shadow boxing because I've got a massive Thai boxing background, massive Sabak background as well. So that's basically what I've been doing, to be honest.
Yeah. So you mentioned the name there, right? Because a lot of people, some of them will be martial artists, but there'll be some people who are listening who'll probably go, "What's Pencak Silat and what's Jurus?" Yeah. I mean, I know what they are, but what? Explain the style of Pencak Silat that you do then.
Okay. Basically, the style that I actually do is mainly from the Paul de Tours lineage, which he was a Dutch Indonesian.
Yeah.
I came through my Jeet Kune Do background because Paul de Tours started training Guru Danny Nasanto. Sifu Kasmagda started to train with Guru Paul de Tours as well. So that's where that lineage comes from for me. So it's come from my Jeet Kune Do circles. So when we actually learn our Pencak Silat, we actually still learn all the Jurus to keep with the tradition. And the Jurus are basically this, they're the equivalent of like the karate katas.
Yeah. So they're like forms, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of big names there. Paul de Tours. He was a massive name back in the 70s and 80s, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yeah. And Kaz Magda. I mean, there's another big name as well, because a lot of people now coming up through. I was talking to a Jeet Kune Do guy not so long ago, and I mentioned Kaz Magda's name, and he was like, "Who's that?" I was like, "What?" And it's amazing how people forget these legends, because they were like legends in our day, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sifu Kas was the first person to ever be a living student at Guru Santos.
Right.
And so for 4 years, from what I can remember. He contacted Guru Santos and said that he wanted to move to the United States to train with him. Uh-huh. And basically, Guru Santos turned around to him and said, "Well, if you're going to move to the United States, you can come and live with me." And that's basically what happened.
Wow, right.
4 years with him as a living student. So
yeah. So you've trained with Dan Inosanto quite a lot.
No, I haven't. Unfortunately, I've never got family good in the sense. I have Sifu Kas a lot because my main teacher was Sifu Dave Carnell, who's no longer with us. He died.
I know. Yeah, it's sad about Dave, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was just such a shock. I mean, one minute he was teaching us, and then the next minute, within a matter of weeks, he just wasn't here anymore, and that was a real shock. It was a real shame as well because like the organisation that like David built up through, and we were all in the Sifu Kas, kind of like became very splintered. A lot of the instructors went their own way, and like they had that entitlement to do that. They were good enough to do that themselves anyway. But that was a real shame for me because like you kind of like you felt like you lost part of your family.
Yeah.
Because we used to get together bi-monthly. We used to train all together as instructors, so you got to see people all the time. And then that just changed completely overnight within that, just because of that one particular circumstance, which was a shame. So, and I'm still in touch with Sifu Kas, not as often as I probably should be, but we were trying to get him over not long ago. We just couldn't do it. We just didn't have the numbers, So getting him over from like California to the UK, just nightmare, to be honest.
No, it's not going to be cheap, is it? And it's not. Well, at the moment, it makes it even more difficult. Like even if you had the money, wouldn't it be difficult? I remember. I met Dave a couple of years before he died, and he was getting me up to Stoke to the club up there to teach Thai. And then next thing I know, he died. Like he'd got cancer again, and because he already fought it, didn't he? He'd already fought cancer once. Like, and when I saw him, he looked fit and well. So it was a surprise when it happened. Like,
Yeah, it was. It was a real shock to us all, to be honest. It was just like, you know, it was just, and it just did. It just happened that way. It was a very similar circumstance to my sister is, because I recently lost my sister to COVID-19.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, bloody hell.
Yeah, you know, she had an underlying health issue anyway. Like, but like she got me taken into hospital. By the time they got her in there, it was just too late. They just couldn't do anything for her. So within a matter of hours, she was gone. You know, so it's and that's just the way life is.
Yeah. You're right. That's the way it is, isn't it? You don't know what's going to happen from one day to another. Like,
yeah, it's right.
You know, all the people I've been talking to, a lot of the martial artists have said more or less the same thing. You know, like the martial arts have given them an idea, you know, that you got to live your life, get on with things, do stuff, because could be gone like that. Like,
yeah.
I think Dave, from what I saw of him, you know him a lot better than I do, but he was always focused on his training. He was passionate about it and all of that, wasn't
he? Yeah, very much so. I mean, he was a great instructor as well. You know.
Oh yeah, he was.
I'm not the fastest learners, you know, which is one of the reasons why I got into NLP, because I like the idea of the way they actually taught people how to learn from like the kinesthetic, visual and auditory.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the fastest of learners. So like if I got stuck on something, I'd just call him over and just say, I'm not getting this. And he'd spend time with you, you know, which is, that to me, that's a proper teacher. And he was just such a bad man. And his depth of knowledge and his understanding of the Jun Fan itself, it was incredible. You know, you get, for me now, you get a lot of crossover with a lot of Jeet Kune Do instructors. You get a lot, they'll teach which is their interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, which is fine, which is what Jeet Kune Do is all about. Tend to find it's a lot more Filipino boxing based.
Yeah.
Whereas with that, like, you know, if you're learning Jun Fan, you're learning Jun Fan. If you're learning Silat, you're learning Silat. If you're learning the Filipino martial arts, you're learning the Filipino martial arts.
Yeah.
And he didn't really interblend them. He would teach them separately, but the interblending actually came from yourself, because then that was your interpretation, that'd be your Jeet Kune Do, you know?
Yeah, his knowledge was, I mean, that's what I noticed about him. Plus, he was very self-effacing. He was really humble sort of guy. Like, you know, when you met him and stuff like that, he wasn't like, no ego at all.
No, none at all. No, he was always quite willing to pass his knowledge on. If you ever got stuck, asked him a question, he'd be like, yeah, this is what you're doing. You know, and he'd tell you, you know, I wouldn't just show you, he'd tell you why you're doing it that way.
So
you know?
So had Dave got into NLP as well then?
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, because I wondered about that when I met him, you know, and I thought, okay, because he was a good communicator, you know, and to be honest, and you'll probably agree with me, there's a lot of martial arts instructors out there who are not good communicators.
Yeah.
You know, they're good at what they do. They're great at what they do, but they can't pass it on to a student. And I noticed Dave he just had that ability, you know, which was very, you know, because coming from an NLP background myself as well, you sort of notice this where people, you go, oh, okay, this guy, has he trained, you know, to be this good in communication, or is he just a natural, which is probably what he was, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was definitely a fantastic communicator, the way he could put things across. You know, you've only got to look at the skill level of the guys that he left behind. You know,
you know,
he left behind. I mean, like some of my peers, you know, like the likes of Simon McGovern and people like that.
I was just going to say Simon, because we still keep in touch, and Simon's had his battles, hasn't he, over the months. But I'm gonna get Simon on to do a podcast as well, because I think he'll have a really interesting story, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, like I say, he was one of my peers anyway. So like, his depth of knowledge and his understanding and everything, and that all came through Dave, you know. And Tom's quite openly admit that, you know. He's but like, there was other instructors as well that he'd left, you know, that you don't hear so much of nowadays, but they were just as good, you know, the way they teach and the way they could pass down the knowledge and the art and so on and so forth. And I was never ashamed to turn around to one of them and say, I'm stuck on this, could you give me an hand? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the way I learn.
But that's how we all learn, isn't it? It's by not being so big-headed that you don't, you know, over the years I've been doing this, you see people who, they think they know it all, and you never do. If you get to that point, you might as well give up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'd if I didn't think I could learn anything, I would be like, I'll do something else now. You know what I mean? The fun of the whole thing, it's like a journey, isn't it? You know, you're on the journey all the time. And I know for a fact, like, because your journey, call it that, it sounds like a cliche, like on some talk show. Hey, Nigel Trotman's journey, you know, is like, I mean, what did you start off with?
Martial arts, I started off in a system called Shaolin Mokgar,
Right.
when I was 8 years of age. And the reason that came about was because my dad was a World War II veteran. He had me when he was 55.
Oh, right.
So he'd actually World War. So he didn't really talk about the war a lot. But when he did, you listened. Because like when he was talking about violence, he was talking about the extreme side of violence where people, they died. It was a war. So like he had this thing back in 1973, around that time. There was a film that was came out which was called Back Alley Princes or Princess, one or the other, and it was a kung fu film. It was like one of the first kung fu
okay,
like in the Birmingham cinemas, and he'd gone to see my eldest sister, and he thought it was brilliant. He thought it was really good the way people, although it was choreographed, he thought it was brilliant the way people could kick and punch.
Yeah.
And so he had this with kung fu,
right.
And he said as I was getting older, like if you can find a kung fu club, we'll put you into it. And as it happened, we actually found one that was on my doorstep. And that's how I started. I started from Shaolin Mokgar Kung Fu when I was 8 years of age. And I trained in it up until I was about 14, I think.
Right.
But I got despondent with the forms because the forms were being taught. They were being taught, but I wasn't being explained why we were being taught forms.
Okay. Yeah.
Which the beauty of, and I kind of became a little bit anti-form in that sense.
Yeah.
Because people didn't explain anything in that respect. And I actually kind of really fell in love with forms when I came across Silat, Juru's wise, because we were told why the Jurus were being done that way.
Yeah.
And the complications of the Jurus, which made me then appreciate what I'd learned years before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the thing is with the Jurus, because I've seen the Jurus and they have a function. If you know, it in some cases it's pretty obvious what they are if you've done any Silat or any martial arts. But I had the same thing karate when I was a kid. I did karate. I started off in karate, and you were just taught katas, and nobody said. They just said this is a block, this is an attack, and that's all you knew. And there was no explanation of the finer details. It wasn't until much later when people, particularly with Goju-Ryu karate, which has more application, I think. You know, the instructor that I had was like explaining why you did this, why and where that was going, and why that, and how many different possibilities there were from that angle, which is like the Jurus, I guess. But nobody explained it to us when I was a kid. It was just like, no, you have to just do them. You know, that was it. You just do them. And I can see where, as you get older, you go, well, I've been doing this like 6 years and nobody's told me what this is for. It's like, I might as well join a boxing club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you started in Shaolin Mokgar, yeah. You got sick of it because of the forms. And then what happened then? So you were 14. So what happened then?
I started looking around at other clubs. I was very lucky with Shaolin Mokgar because one of the teachers that taught me was a gentleman called Sifu Rob Morgan. Although he wasn't my first teacher, he actually took the club over from my first teacher called Sifu Roy Baines. And when Sifu Rob took it over, we started to, once I was 14, I actually started to look at other things. And I was buying Combat Magazine at the time. I started buying Martial Arts Illustrated as well around that time. And obviously there was other arts in those magazines. I actually had a fascination with Thai boxing, but ironically enough, although you were in Birmingham, never knew where you were.
Like the Shaolin Temple, hidden.
yeah, it was like it was one of those. It was, you know, you wasn't really sport for choice in them days. You actually you normally had like a local karate club and a local kung fu club and a local jiu-jitsu or judo one.
Yeah.
So you weren't really sport for choice. And the magazine sort of started opening up people's eyes, and that's where I first learned about Silat. I think Jack Hoffman was putting articles in there at the time.
Yeah.
Dave later on started doing articles for Jeet Kune Do in MAI, and that's how I started getting more involved in that kind of stuff. So I started to dabble a lot in different systems. Yeah, I dabbled in judo, I dabbled in karate. I had a mate that taught me how to box many years previously.
Right.
Which was like, that was a bit of an eye opener because I did a bit of sparring with him. And like, you know, I was sort of like very classical kung fu, and he was kind of like just punching me in the face. I was like,
yeah.
hang on, it's supposed to be happening, you know what I mean? So he kind of made me
yeah.
what was art form and what wasn't actually art form. And I was remember, because what I remember being at school, like all the guys that I knew that were actually tough fighters, they were actually all into combat sports. They were all like judo guys, they were all like boxers.
Yeah.
And I remember, now hang on, I'm learning this martial art. That's supposed to be making me formidable.
Yeah.
I'm getting that. Andy Toomey here, by my mate, he was a half decent boxer, but like, he only weren't being brutal. He was just like pop, 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 pop.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there, done that. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a bit annoying when some scummy mate who does no training, he's done a few punches on the bag in a boxing club. You've done, like, I've done karate for like 6 years. And me and my mate, Leslie Forrest, right? And I remember him, little bugger, right? And you know what I'm talking about. He just, we're bobbing around. And I'm like this. I'm sort of like karate stance. He goes, boom, boom. I'm like, fuck, shit. I've got to learn this. You know what I mean? 6 years of karate, and you got somebody who does a bit of bag work, knocks you on your back. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it is. It does open your eyes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that kind of start makes you looking at things in a wider perspective, and that was the thing that attracted me to Jeet Kune Do as well, was the fact of those guys were kind of ahead of the game massively. Yeah. They were kind of like, they were kickboxing, they had elements of Thai in there, they were doing still classical type kung fu, as in not the Wing Chun type trapping type stuff.
Yeah,
and they were still doing things like they were grappling as well. So they were kind of like looking at all areas. They become all-round martial artists, and that's what appealed to me, those. And that's why eventually I ended up going down that route, because it's to make me a more rounded fighter. I remember Guru Santo once turning around and saying in an article, he said, "I'm not trying to make you the best." He said, "I'm trying to make you the most well-rounded." He said, like, you know, if you want to be the best in a specific area, then you study that area.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people that like he's turned out like throughout the world, and God, he's got some amazing instructors. You know, they all specialise in certain areas.
Yeah.
Look at the likes of like Eric Paulson, for example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, and I've trained in very con seminars quite a lot. And at one stage, I was linked with Ewan Campbell, as you know. And Ewan's a phenomenal guy.
Yeah, Ewan's a good bloke. And I don't think he's training at the moment, really. I don't know what he's doing.
That's a shame, because like, I did actually. I was starting to go down the CSW route because of the amount of grappling that I'd actually done in the past. And like, my first way, I actually started off in freestyle wrestling to give me a solid base, basic grappling, and then I was kind of cross training with Eddie as well, because although Eddie Karim was like a Muay Thai instructor, and he was my Muay Thai instructor, he was training with a lot with Vadim Kolganov. He'd done jiu-jitsu in the past, so like. His club wasn't really, although he passed it off as a Thai boxing club, it wasn't really a Thai boxing club. It was kind of like, he was doing a lot of different stuff. He'd been training probably young as well at that time. So like, I started learning submissions initially from people like Eddie. He started teaching me leg locks from the Sambo, which is what he'd been doing for a while with Eddie. So my evolution was quite a weird one, really, in that respect. You know, because like, you know, you go to a Thai boxing club and you end up like doing elements of other stuff. You know, because that's what he was. Because Eddie was training because he wanted to train the way he wanted to train.
Yeah.
He didn't train the way you wanted to. You were doing what he wanted to do at the time, which was great, because like, he gave you a massive repertoire of skills.
Yeah, I remember when he first come to the club with his long hair.
yeah, that's the first.
I've seen got. And I can prove it as well because I got pictures. And he used to come along with him and his mate. God, we used to train in a number of different venues. And I remember, because at times there was only like 4 or 5 of us training, you know, back in the early 80s. My club at the uni was always quite a big one. You know, that was quite busy. But my own little club, which I had in a variety of different locations in Birmingham, which would move frequently because of the rent and things like that. There'd be this same group would follow me around, you know, and he'd be one of them, like, you know. See, I can't get rid of these people.
Funny enough, you sound like me, mate.
And then I got saddled with you. Yeah. So when did I first meet you then? That would have been obviously through Eddie, like, but, or was it? I don't know. I forget these things.
No, weirdly enough, I actually first started doing Muay Thai with yourself. And then
You came to me first, right?
Yeah, you first, because you were in Sturchley at the time.
Oh, of course, the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, by the roadhouse. So what happened was, at the time I was training with Rich Green, but I was going up to Rich Green in Coventry because we were going to Rich Green. There was me and two mates that were going to Rich Green in Coventry. And what happened was, two of my mates, their jobs changed. So I got up there because I didn't drive. So I ended up with a bit of having about a 6-month gap from Rich, but I stayed in touch with him and I said to Rich, look, I will be back. I said, I'm working out all the training times and everything else, like after work, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then he said, where do you live? And I said, Cox Green. And he turned around to me, he said, is that far from the Swan Yard? I said, no, it's in walking distance from where I live. And he said, Eddie Quinn started a tile class there. And I went, I think it was Eddie's ever second open class. He'd been teaching for a while, privately. And I went to Eddie's class. And I went into his second Muay Thai class. And I remember watching it. And I remember thinking, this guy is a fucking nutter. And he was just nuts. He really was. And I thought, I've got to train with him. Because there's two reasons. One, he's on my doorstep. And I like the way he teaches. And he was teaching Muay Thai more from a street perspective rather than a sport background. So I ended up training with Eddie. And I've been with him ever since. I've been with him since 1998 now. So, and that's what happened. I remember his classes going from, when he started, he had about 15, 16 students. And I think in about 7 weeks, he went down to 4 of us.
Yeah. that sounds about right.
And then for about 2 years, he's all he had was these 4 people. That was it. I don't think he was even covering the rent. He was just teaching for the look. And then but the guys that he turned out, I mean, there was myself, there was Dan Jones. I mean, Dan Jones at the time, he was only 15 years of age, and we spatter each other.
Yeah.
But it was such good fun, and it was tough. You know, it's the one thing that I always remember Eddie always saying, and he says it to this day, particularly since he developed the approach. He turned around and used to say, "Oh, you know, if the one thing I can always advocate is just learn to hit really fucking hard," and that was the one thing he's always advocated. And I mean, every time we hit pads, he used to hit pads like he was trying to murder them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, he came from a good stable, you see, originally, because I remember we were talking about this years and years and years ago, and it was exactly what you said. You know, you've got like the same 4 or 5 lads. You're thinking, how am I going to pay the rent? Like, you know, so I started switching on to that, and I thought, hang on a minute. I'm going to have a commercial class, which was still good Thai boxing, grounded on good technique, but no sparring. And then I'll have a fighters class where all the nutters come. And now what's happened, Nigel, it's weird. I don't know whether you've noticed it. I've got more fighters than I have in a commercial class. So more people come to fight now than used to back in the day. Because back in the day, people were scared of Thai boxing, I think.
Yeah, I think it was that thing of, because it was very different to boxing. Although you had the same skill set as a boxer, there was always that fear of, like, you know, nobody else being punched in the face, let alone being elbowed.
Yeah,
in the face.
Yeah, it was the elbows, yeah.
It's just a completely different ball game.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm teaching MMA to guys. Because I used to work for a gym, and they asked me to teach an MMA class. And I said, yeah, not a problem, because of my background, you know, through my Jeet Kune Do background, learning the Shuto through that and that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, not a problem. So, like, some of the stand that we were doing, I used to get them put head guards on. I used to say, right, you're going to emphasise your elbow. So I said, but you're going to use your forearms. I said, because if you're hitting somebody with the elbow, you're either going to KO an eye socket in. I saw you're going to cut each other open, which is not. I said, but if you don't train them, you won't use them. Right? And you could just see that, like, you know, there was that kind of like anal clenching, even though I'd said that you were just going to use your forearms. And they were just kind of like, are you serious? Like, you're training to be MMA fighters, lads. You know what I mean? You're going to get punched on the floor. You're going to get elbowed on the floor. Standing up, at least you can control that to a certain degree.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, it's like people, you know, you got like British champions. I remember this back in the day. You had British Thai boxing champions that suddenly get it in their head to go to Thailand to fight. And you used to go, I remember 1 or 2 coming to me saying, can you teach me how to elbow? Because I'm going to Thailand to fight. And you go, oh my God. You know, you've left it a bit late, like, you know. And then, of course, you get one clunk in the head with an elbow and you're just on your arse then, aren't you? Because it's a big psychological shock, elbows.
Oh yeah, man.
And
You
it always amazed me why do people not teach Thai with elbows? That it's part of the sport, for God's sake, you know.
Yeah, I've had that conversation a few times with like Pete Ashford as well.
Oh,
Like, you know.
oh, there's a blast from the past. Yes, he haunts me. He still comes in the gym, you know. Good old Pete.
Yeah, he's like a bad smell. You can't get rid of him.
He's
He's
brilliant.
not one of them smells that really part of the gym, you know what I mean? So, well, Pete's a great man. So
right, there's only
but
two people. I came to Birmingham. This is about you, but I've got to say this so people can hear this because people need to know about Pete Ashford. He came to me when he was like 14 or something like that, and I never really noticed him in the class much. There was only a few of us, and then suddenly 16, he was like this machine, like, you know, he just turned into this machine, and then he got a British title in 4 fights. You know, I mean, like phenomenal, you know, talented, and still keeps in touch, still comes into the gym now and again, hits the bags, and my guys will go, just had this bloke in with missing tooth. He nearly broke my arms. I go, oh, that'll be Pete. I must have missed him. And I go, who is he? It's like, he's become like a legend, you know. And quite right as well, because he's one of them, isn't he, you know?
Yeah, he's well, I remember saying to him the one day, I said, you know, because he used to fight in the full-time rules.
Yeah, of course.
I remember saying, how did you lose your tough? He said, oh, it's a long story. He said, European title fight. He said, I battered the lad. He said, it was the last round. He said, everybody was saying, like, don't be a div now, like, you know, you've won this, you know, just take your time. He said, I started showboating. He said, and he's come steaming in with this elbow, hit me straight in the mouth and knocked me out. He said, and I woke up no tough. And that's the thing, you know, people like, you know, that's how elbows can change.
Oh, yeah.
So,
they change a fight on a turn of a coin, like, you know, it's quick as that. And it always surprises me why people still don't train with them, because I think it's too dangerous. You go, well, why are you doing Thai? Do something else then. So, sorry, nice. Let's go back. So you started doing Thai with Eddie.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact. Let's stick with the Thai for a bit, because you went and trained with Pamu as well, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I actually.
I thought you had done. Okay.
I knew trained with him. So when Dan came back from Thailand, he was sort of like, I was doing a lot of training with Dan anyway.
Oh, right.
And we used to train together. So like the stuff that he'd been doing with Pimmer, he started to come and show us. So like and at that time I think Eddie had started training a lot as well with Tony Myers.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Getting a lot of the new stuff through Tony as well, in that respect. But Dan had actually gone to he went to Thailand, lived there for 3 months.
Right.
Was it 3 or 4 months? Dan had been in Thailand for.
And we're talking about Dan Costello, aren't we?
No, Dan Jones.
Oh, right, okay. Because Dan Costello's another name from that period, isn't he?
Yeah, that was one of Ben's lads. That was Dan.
Ben, one of Bennett Bates lads. Yeah.
Yeah, he was another tough lad. Dan was on Old Cozza. Yeah, but Dan Jones had actually gone out and lived with Pima. He'd done a lot of training out there. He was out, like I say, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 months. Came back. He was training with me privately. He'd just come around my house. We just do stuff, and he was showing me what he'd been doing in Thailand. And at that time, he'd started like, speaking to Tony, because he could train with Tony in the mornings. Before Tony started work, so he'd been doing a lot of training with Tony. At that time as well, Eddie'd also kind of like, he'd been doing a lot of boxing training with Tommy Thompson over in Nottingham. So like our hands at that time, they'd come on phenomenally. Because Eddie was doing a lot of Western boxing in with the Thai boxing. And then what had happened was, we went back to Tony. So Tony said, like, you know, the hands are slightly different, so on and so forth. Talking the differences, the nuances of why we do it the way we do it compared to boxers.
Yeah.
So like we had like a real like cross section of like really good instructors that like we'd actually got through people like Eddie, and Eddie was passing all that on. And he was, because like Eddie was like Dave in that respect. You know, if he learnt it, he'd pass it on, because otherwise, as we were saying earlier, blink of an eye, you could be gone. That knowledge has gone with you.
Yeah, that's right.
If you haven't passed it on, then it was a waste of time learning it.
Yeah.
So it was as simple as that. So like we had like a real nice cross cultural kind of thing going on at the time. Then Eddie went, we started having guys that wanted to fight all the time then as well. I'd actually done an interclub down at Stevie B's, which you refed.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And I did it actually because there was Rob Ellen and Dan Jones had sort of like said they wanted to do an interclub, have a go at it. And they said to me, because we were roughly the same weight, I think there was only about like 4 kilos between all of us. And they said to me, "Oh, do you want to do it?" And I just went, "Oh, yeah, I'll do it with us." And we trained for it, got together, started training, done this interclub, and I loved it. And the one thing that I realised from that was actually the adrenaline dump, because weirdly enough, I actually didn't have any adrenaline build up to the fight.
Yeah.
And Eddie said, he actually said to me, I said, "I'm not nervous." And he said, "Yeah, I know." And he said, that's kind of bothering me a little bit. I was like, "Yeah, I don't know why." And then I got in the ring. After the first couple of punches, I had this massive adrenaline dump and I was blowing out my backside. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I remember I fought I was 34 at the time when I first done it. And the lad I fought was 17-year-old Ukrainian lad.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying to me, like, you know, he's just make sure you keep your hands up, because this lad's had quite a few boxing matches. You know, he's an boxer. And I remember at one stage, I remember punching him on the chin. And I remember seeing his head disappear. I remember thinking in my head, "Where's his head gone?" And his head just cracked up and he just looked at me and come at me. And I thought, "What?" And it was just, and that was real. I mean, he was a really tough kid. And he had bottle as well. I mean, I remember hitting him in the body that hard. I don't know if you remember this, but he was actually in the corner throwing up into a bucket.
Yeah.
And I actually had that on video because one of my friends had filmed it. And I hit him that hard. And I remember saying to you, "Is Europe?" You went, "He's a sort of boxer. He should be able to take a body shot."
Yeah. I didn't say that, did I? But I do say that when people was, you know, he's taking a body shot. Yeah, well, come on, a punch to the body. You get kneed in the body. Come on, yeah. People don't understand that, do they?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember in that after the first round, I'd thrown a low round kick and he blocked it, and I caught my toes on his shin.
Oh.
I hobbled back into the corner at the end of the first round, and I remember saying to Eddie, I went, "Ed, I think," so I didn't want to look. It was one of those. I didn't want to look and see all my toes mangled. And I remember saying to Eddie, I said, "Ed, I think I've broken my toes." And Eddie turned around to me and he went, "Your toes are the least of your worries." I was like, "Get back out there, like another 2 rounds." Or, you know.
Yeah.
It was great. I hobbled home on the night and had a bag of mixed veg on my foot, so I never had no frozen peas. I had a bag of mixed veg on my foot. And all that lad went out drinking, you know, so I won. Sort of thing.
Brilliant. Now, I mean, you remember Jason Purnell? I remember when because my saying was, because Jason would always break his toes at some point, and I'd go, "You're supposed to break your toes, you're a Thai boxer." If you haven't broken your toes, you haven't had a good fight. Yeah, it's that old catching it, getting your range just wrong. You know, for people who don't know Thai boxing, who are listening or watching this, if you get your range wrong and it's not shin on chin, you're going to suffer. So
that was kind of funny.
Shin on shin. You must be mad.
Yeah, I remember getting warned because I was actually 2 times British Savate So champion.
Well, I was going to come to that because I was going to say, how the hell did you? Because I remember seeing you before the Savate time, and I think it might have been at some sort of course up at Lucky's or something like that, the validation or something. Anyway, I can't remember. But I remember I saw you, and then I didn't see you for a while, and then, like normal, I bumped into you again, and you were like a Savate champion. I was like, what happened there? You know, you're like that martial arts butterfly. You go, "Oh, we'll have a bit of this. Ooh, I'll go," you know what I mean? But I'll get really good at this as well. And yeah, you were Golden Gloves champion or something in Savate, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 2 times British Savate So champion. I went into the British Championships when I was 39, and it was the first one I fought. And I actually said to the GBSF, I said, "Look, I'm an experienced martial artist." At that time, I was training my Savate coach, who was Alain Jean-Baptiste.
Right.
And this was just before Alain, because Alain's from the Seychelles. So Alain had learnt Savate in the Seychelles. I mean, and Alain was a British champion as well.
Uh-huh.
He'd actually British title several times. And I said you know, I'm an experienced martial artist. And they said that's fine. Have you ever competed? I said, I've done one Thai intergroup. I said, like, you know, full contact. And they said, well, you know, that's irrelevant kind of thing. I was like, okay. And they put me into the British Championships. I'm basically my weight division. They put me in the novice section, which was fair enough because I've got no experience in Savat. But I just went through the division, my weight division, knockouts assaults. So they ended up putting me against who was then a guy called Tony Crossman, who was an absolutely fantastic saboteur. And Tony was actually the British champion at the time. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think he just lost the European title.
Right.
And I can't remember if he held it and lost it, or whether he was fighting for it and didn't quite get it. He just lost it on points.
Right.
And because like Savat, it was, although the Savat so wasn't full contact, you were still actually physically hitting each other. And depending on the ref that you had, if you had a French ref, you were okay, because they were okay with a little bit of excessive contact. And I actually ended up going into Savat because like I could still kick the legs with a shoe on and so forth. And in that fight, I actually got my shoot bone cracked, even though it wasn't supposed to be heavy contact. Right. Which was fine. I accepted that because we were kicking with the shoe on. And I really wanted to fight Tony Crossman again in the following championships. And by that time, Tony actually retired. I think he went into MMA for a short period of time, which was great because he was a brilliant fighter. And then when I went back in, when I fought when I was 41, I actually won the title. I actually won my weight division. When I was 42, I'd gone through a very, very bad breakup with my ex-partner, so I didn't compete. When I was 43, I fought again, and I actually won it again. And then, like, I ended up backing away from the GBSF because Alan went back to the Seychelles to live. I mean, he's back now. He came back, but he went back to the Seychelles for a time to live. So, right. They wanted me to kind of take over the Birmingham club, and I just wasn't into the politics, you know. I mean, my dad actually asked my youngest son to actually fight on the British squad, to try for the British squad. Mm-hmm. But he just couldn't make the training. He was all held over like Cambridge. We had them down here the one time. I actually got them down as a group, and they came down to train in Birmingham, which I arranged. And then like, the next one was in Cambridge, and I think the next one was in Oxford. And my son was working at the time, so he couldn't make it. And I just kind of took a back step with them all in the end, to be honest with you, purely because like there was kind of like he was getting me. You know, Ali Baxter sort of stood down from becoming like the president of the GBSF, and it was handed over to a couple of different other people. They kind of swapped hands a couple of times, and I just kind of backed away from it really.
It's a shame, isn't it? It's funny, isn't it? Because wherever you go, wherever you got martial arts, you got people who you've got these like egos and politics, and instead of just getting on with the training, and you know what I mean. And I mean, there's going to be some people out there who've never heard of Savat. I did a podcast with Tommy Joe Moore, you know, Tommy, who does a Bartitsu. And he was talking a little bit about Savat because he teaches there's a bit of Savat in Bartitsu. But Savat's a French martial art, isn't it? So I'll let you explain Savat because it's your podcast, you know.
Savat basically, from the research that I've done into it and from the history of it, but basically it was actually used by French sailors. So in very traditional Savat, you'll see when they kick, they'll throw the arm behind them, which they actually now believe was actually their way of holding on to the rigging, so they could actually hold the rigging while they kicked, because obviously the boat would be moving. But it's believed that the French sailors actually, when they'd actually been to the Orient, had actually seen Oriental martial arts and saw the kicking ability of the Orient, and actually basically they simulated it and turned it into a French kicking style. Later on, if I remember rightly, I think it was Owen. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was Owen Conroy Owen had actually fought a French saboteur. He was a Western boxer, and because he used all hands, he just stood really close to him and just punched him, and that's when the boxing side of it got added into it.
Right.
They to adapt around about the 1800s. They adapted Western boxing into the actual kicking, because originally it was just a purely kicking system. So, and he was quite common amongst French hooligans. They'd wear a hard bottom shoe and they'd kick people to death because it was just the way of doing it, you know. So they'd kick you in the shins, which was a real painful place to be kicking anyway, especially with a hard bottom shoe on. So they'd kick you in, and they'd kick you somewhere else, and then they'd just rob you. And then they started to add in the boxing because of that cross competition between the saboteur and the English boxer.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So, and then it evolved into the art that it is today. I mean, it's very fast. It's very fluid. If you look at some of the top saboteurs, I mean, to watch them move is absolutely amazing. The timing's incredible, you know. And people kind of always sort of like look at it and go, well, and to quote Ron Belicki, actually, who's a Jeet Kune Do instructor, he saw Savate once many years ago, and then somebody said to him, "Yeah, it's not the same as the Thai kick." And he that's what he said to somebody. He was like, "It's not the same as a Thai kick." And the guy who was showing Savate, he said, "Have you ever actually felt somebody kick you with a shoe on properly?" And he thought, "Well, no." And he said, "Well," and he basically put a tight belly pad on.
Yeah.
I won't put it in full power. He said, "Well, I will hit it so you feel it." And he hit it, and he said, "It just doubled me up through the side pad."
Yeah, of course.
So he said, "It made me realise then that like it was just another extension to something that I could already do." He said, because they were using the full range of the foot. He said, whereas in Thai, they don't. He said it's a much closer system. He said, so it's still kickboxing, but not in the same context.
Yeah, yeah.
And even Bruce Lee looked at Savate. He had film footage of saboteurs, black and white footage, and he liked the idea of, because he developed Jeet Kune Do to become a street fighting system. He liked the idea of being able to kick with a shoe on, because most Oriental martial arts kick with bare feet.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I've heard this said. You know, people saying, "Oh yeah, have you seen that Savate? It looks a big crap." I go, right. Well, no. And exactly what you say. I had experience with a Savate guy in Newcastle long time ago, long before I moved to Birmingham, and he said, "Yeah, without shoes, I'll break my toes, but I fight with my shoes on when I'm in the street." And we had crappy. There weren't proper Thai belly shields in them days, just because we didn't have them. Just a crappy belly protector type thing. And he kicked, and the point of his shoe, you know, it's just like straight into the shield, and it just went through, you know. And I was well impressed by that. But he said, obviously, I can't do that with my bare toes, but if I could. And that was a student up in Newcastle University back in the early 70s when I lived up, you know, in the Northeast, like when I used to train in karate, you know. And I was quite impressed by Savate then. But of course, nobody was doing it in the UK. You know, you just had the odd people here and there doing their own thing, I guess, you know. And there was no organisation or anything.
Yeah.
So when you said you'd done Savate, I was like, whoa, bloody hell, that was a blast from the past. And I thought you'd do well at it, like, but to get to a British, you know what I mean? That's amazing, that was. I was gobsmacked. In fact, I think it might have been, I don't know, you were at a validation or something. And I'm sure it was at Lucky's, and you might have had it then, because I got you to teach. You know, on the validations, I always grab instructors, say, right, they'll be talking about something they've learned or something they're passionate about. I go, all right, you can teach that. And they go, oh, shit. What, in front of everybody? I go, yeah, come on. It was a way of testing people's ability to teach, because you're an instructor. You're claiming to be an instructor under me, then you've got to teach. And I remember, I don't know whether you remember this, but I remember pulling you out because you were talking about clinch work and some stuff you'd been doing. And I said, would you like to teach that? And you went, oh, yeah. And I thought, oh, good lad. You know, and you got out there and you taught the whole group, and they were all instructors. And I thought, I'm blowing smoke up your arse now, but I thought, bloody brilliant. And of course, others had to follow that, and they were finding it quite difficult. You love teaching, don't you? You absolutely.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, I think you're being a bit modest, like, because you're a really good teacher, and I've seen you in action. So you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do get a buzz from teaching. I like the fact of that, you know, because if somebody asks me a question that I don't know, I'll actually go out and I'll find out.
Yeah.
Because that means there's a gap in my.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm always happy to people. And with regards to teaching, like I said before, you know, if you're not passing it on and you're gone like that, that knowledge is a waste. It's a waste. It's just gone. You know, and I remember many years ago, an incident where the late Herman Sawanda, Guru Herman Sawanda, he was going to a seminar to teach a seminar with his two top students, and perished in a car crash, all three of them. So he's the man. The Muda system was never, from what I've been led to believe, was never actually passed on in its entirety, because the three people, the holders of it, they were gone in the blink of an eye. You know, that was a crying shame, because it was just one of those things that happened. And I've always thought to myself, if I don't pass on the skill set that I've got, then people aren't going to realise what's out there, you know. And people say to me, do you mind if I go and train with somebody else? I'll say, no, go ahead. Go and train with those other people. And what I've invariably found is people that have gone and trained with other people, they've normally come back to me anyway.
Yeah.
Because they tend to, they've got me anyway. But I'm okay with that. You know, I'm quite people to go and look at other people. I do it all the time. I go and train with other instructors. Over the last couple of years, I've trained with a guy called Rob Poynton, who's a massive Systema instructor in this country. He's a big name in this country, Systema. Yeah. I started looking at Systema purely from a holistic point of view, with regards to because they're still teaching all like the meditation side of it, or the holistic side of like, the actual art form, which I really like.
Yeah.
Tai Chi guys still do. So I try and train with Rob Poynton as often as I possibly can, because just purely because it interests me. I still train with people like Johnny Silman, Guru Johnny Silman, who's now become my Chimandi instructor. Mm-hmm. So because there's a lot of Chimandi within our Sarat. Yeah. So I'm actually now sort of like isolating one particular element of the striking side of it, but I'm going to somebody who's learnt it more in depth than what I think is in our Sarat. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
So I'm actually now going to those kind of people. And
you see, it's really...
Right, and then that just gets passed over to my students anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I like about your approach. It's eclectic, but it's not a mismatch of things, because you get people who are, I know one or two people who will remain nameless and have huge groups. I mean, massive clubs, but they're not particularly good at any of them, but they sort of put them together as if that's the Jeet Kune Do concept. Whereas people like yourself and Eddie, you've spent time focused on a specific art. You know what I mean? And you get good at it before you start mix it, or start teaching other things. And also being very open about what you're doing with your students as well. Not having that ego where you go, I am the master sort of thing. When in fact, I mean, I'm the same. I'll see you. I'd like to think that I passed that idea on Eddie, who then passed it on to guys like yourself. That idea of you've got to be open, you've got to be honest and with yourself, and go, and your student shows you something, you learn from it, and then you start teaching it as part of what you do. And it's refreshing to see. But believe it or not, there's not that many people like you, like us out there, because the whole thing's become monetized. I think, it's like, let's see how many people, how much money can we make? It saddens me, Nigel. I don't know whether you agree, but I've met a lot of people recently, and the first thing they do when they meet you, when they know you're a martial artist, they go, "Oh, how much money you making?" Seriously, I'm like, well, blatantly not a lot. I've got a 20-year-old's car, and they've got a brand new top of the range car outside the gym, and they always get photographs next to it, and I'm like, are you actually into this for the martial arts, or is it just a job? Because I can't do it as a job, it is my job, but I have to do other things to make money, because it's about the art. I love learning stuff. I mean, I'm learning Western sword at the moment, which is, I'm doing HEMA now, lots of HEMA. I'm still teaching Thai and self-protection and meditation and all the other stuff that I've always done. But I'm getting into Western methods of combat now, and talking to Tommy the other day was interesting as well. So you have to, what I'm saying is you're like that, aren't you? You're constantly learning. We could have this conversation next year and you'll be doing something else, like Eskimo hacks thrown or something like that. You know what I mean? Am I right? You will, won't you? You'll be doing something.
Yeah, well, ironically enough, one of a friend of yours, Steve Stanton, contacted me recently.
Oh, Steve, yeah.
I was contacted by one of my teachers, Bernard Leddy. Bernard's actually he's my shillelagh instructor.
Oh, you're doing shillelagh, of course, yes.
Yeah, I've actually learned purely because, and that happened because like, one of my friends contacted me. And he said, "There's a shillelagh workshop down in Redditch. Did you fancy going?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll come down to that. I'll have a look at it." You know, he said what it's like, see how similar it is to the Filipino stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just completely different.
Yeah.
Absolutely completely different.
Yeah.
The way they hold the stick goes. And that was done by a guy called Daniel Leddy, which was Bernard's brother. And Bernard's was actually the European representative for the Doyle family shillelagh system.
Right.
And then like Daniel contacted me, so I said, we've got an instructor's course coming up. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm interested. And I've done it. And I've done the shillelagh. And then, like, weirdly enough, Steve had actually contacted Bernard, and he'd referred him to me. And then I'd had like a couple of brief text kind of like conversations with like Steve, and he kind of like said to me like, "Oh, you know my friend Bob," and I went, "Bob's player," and he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, I've known him for years," yeah. And he was just kind of weird. I was like,
he rang me. He rang me. He said, "Oh, speaking of mate of yours," and I went, "Who like?" And he goes, "Nigel Trotman." I went, "Bloody hell, yeah, of course, yeah. Do you know Nigel? And how do you know Nigel?" I said, "Bloody hell, we go back when he was a kid, like, you know what I mean? I knew his instructor, Eddie, I taught him, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "God, it's a small world." I said, and he told me about the shillelagh, like, because, I don't know, it's just an art, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether it's from the east or the west. If somebody's good at using something, you know, it's like me with the sword, and I'm doing English stick as well, you know, English single stick, which is similar in some ways to Eskrima.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sitting in here, Nigel. I've literally got 12 swords now. I've got broadswords, sabers. I mean, look. I've got it. It's in the background here. Look. I've got Scottish broadswords. I've got sabers. I love it, mate. And all my students are like, because they come about a year and a half ago. They come in the gym. One of them come in early. I'd got in early, and I'm going through what's called the broadsword manual. It's a Henry Angelo from the 1700s, and it's a system. And I'm going through it all, bum, 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 bum. And these guys walked in, and they were like, I went, oh, right. And they went, "What are you doing?" And I said, broadsword, like. And they were like, oh, you got to teach me that. And it's like, it's these things are infectious, you know. And an important point you made, you know, it's about lineage and passing things on. Right, and that's what we've been talking about, really. And these guys, it's really good to see these 17, 18-year-old lads have got that same like spark that we've got, you know. And you just hope that they're going to keep it, you know, and because they're the future, and the stuff I'm passing on to them is going to represent what it's my life's work, isn't it? I mean, I've been doing the martial arts for 50 years. You must have been doing it pretty close on 30 odd. Oh, maybe more, 40 years you've been in the martial arts?
Yeah, 40 years I've been trying.
It's a big investment, isn't it? It's a big investment. And you know, how old are you now? 50?
I'm 50 in January.
You're 50 in January, yeah. I've got 14 years on you. This is what you're going to look like with arthritis and a bad knee. Well, look, Nige, obviously we could talk all day. It's coming. We've come up. We've done an hour now, mate. It's amazing how people always say, "What the podcast has got?" I go, "Yeah, it's about an hour." So what I'd like to do, Nige, if you're up for it, I think we've got so much more to talk about. You know, the Silat, you know, the shillelagh, definitely. You know, and any of your other ideas, because I know you're into NLP, into meditation, and all of that side of things. And it'd be good to have a chat about the other side, you know, like the other aspects of what you do, and talk a bit more about the Silat as well, because that's such a badly represented art, isn't it? You know, there's so much bad Silat out there now, whereas before, you know, back in the 80s, there was hardly any Silat. You know, it was only the Jeet Kune Do people would really talk about Silat. You know, if you'd like to, I'd like to talk a bit more about that. But this has been brilliant, Matt, honestly. So what I'm going to do, Matt, I'm going to, I'll say trot, and it's been fascinating, Matt, and we'll get you back for a second one. All right, Nige?
Yeah, it's cool. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.